The instant I heard the splinter of wood and the slam of my front door crashing open, I knew trouble had arrived. I barely had time to grab the shotgun from behind the coat rack before a flood of people stormed into my living room. They weren't police, weren't feds. They were HOA board members from the new development down the road, Green Valley Ranch Estates, and leading them like a wannabe dictator was Darren Colburn, self-appointed president of the HOA and retired attorney with a God complex. In his hand, a bright red slip of paper, and on his face, the smirk of a man who thought he was untouchable. By the authority of Green Valley Ranch HOA, Darren bellowed, all firearms are hereby banned. This is a mandatory seizure. I stood there, heart pounding, eyes wide in disbelief. This had to be a nightmare. My ranch sat on 30 acres of private land, passed down from my grandfather. I wasn't even part of the HOA. Or so I thought. Before I could open my mouth, 2 board members yanked the shotgun out of my hands. Another brushed past me and marched down the hallway to my gun cabinet. I shouted, lunging, but it was too late. You can't do this. I yelled. This is theft. Darren turned with a satisfied grin. Inside our community bylaws, your Second Amendment rights are irrelevant. You should read the updated charter. You lost, Ethan. I was frozen. They emptied my gun cabinet, me dad's old deer rifle, my vintage Colt collection, even a Civil War replica musket I never fired. Everything was dumped into the back of a battered HOA van. Outside, neighbors watched in silence. Some looked horrified, some indifferent. I stood in the dust, empty-handed, as the van disappeared with my legacy. Darren leaned in as he passed. Get used to it. You're under our roof now. I had no idea how they claimed power over my land. So I started digging. Turned out, about 6 months earlier, after my grandfather passed and I inherited the property, the county had rezoned part of the outskirts for residential expansion. My grandfather had signed a vague cooperation agreement back in 1979, never expecting it to be weaponized decades later. Green Valley Ranch Estates used that loophole, plus a sketchy new covenant, to rope my land into their domain. At first, I ignored them. Figured no one could tell me what to do on a private ranch. But then came the violations. Fines for livestock, for overgrown pastures, for wild deer that wandered through at dusk. I thought it was a joke until Carl, their clipboard-toting compliance officer, started driving by on a golf cart, snapping pictures. It escalated fast. Every week brought new threats. Then Darren was elected HOA president. He had big dreams of turning Green Valley into a model community, starting with a gun ban. When it passed, just barely, he made me the poster child of noncompliance. After the raid, he posted pictures of my seized firearms on the HOA Facebook page, boasting about how he'd made the neighborhood safer. I sat on my porch that night staring across my fields, the same ones Grandpa Wade used to walk with me every evening. I swore I wouldn't let this stand. But I had to be smart. If I flew off the handle, they'd paint me as a crazy redneck with a vendetta. So I started with the neighbors. The ones who had looked shocked during the seizure. Some of them opened up, especially Mrs. Claiborne, a widow whose late husband once worked the same land as Grandpa. I never trusted that Darren, she said, pouring me tea. He talks pretty but walks like a tyrant. I gathered affidavits, copies of the original property maps, and that dusty 1979 agreement. Then I drove straight to the county office. Doris, the clerk, tapped her keyboard, squinting. Her eyes widened. They filed a lien against your land, she whispered. Over $30,000 in fines. For what? I asked. Everything and nothing, she muttered. This stinks, Ethan. And I don't see your parcel within their original charter. That was my first glimmer of hope. I called Sam Hartley, the best property lawyer around, and an old friend of Grandpa's. Sam heard me out, then growled. They can't do this. We'll stop the eviction, sue for illegal seizure, and shine a light on their lies. That night, I returned to find Darren standing smugly on my porch. With him, Carl and 2 bruisers in fake security uniforms. Darren padlocked my barn and waved another paper. Pending forfeiture, he announced. This structure is now HOA property. I wanted to punch him, but I remembered Sam's warning. Don't lose control. Let them hang themselves. So I stepped back, fists trembling. Sam filed the injunction at sunrise. The judge granted it. A restraining order halted all HOA actions until a full hearing. That should have been the end, but Darren doubled down. Called in a federal agent from ATF, claiming I had unregistered weapons. They showed up without a warrant. I refused entry. The agent backed off, promising to return with paperwork. They never did. Then came the night attack. I woke to trucks rumbling into the yard. Flashlight in hand, I crept out to see masked men prying at the barn doors. My stolen gun sat in crates by their feet. I grabbed Grandpa's bullwhip and cracked it like thunder. They froze. I shouted, "Trespassing! Theft! The sheriff's on the way." It was a bluff. My phone was inside. But they panicked and fled. Next morning, I called Sheriff Bartlett. He sent Deputy Vega to document everything. She took one look at the broken locks, the tire marks, and nodded. "Even if they claim HOA jurisdiction, this is criminal. We'll investigate." Sam, meanwhile, subpoenaed their records. What he found was gold, fabricated votes, misused funds, and fake boundary expansions. At the emergency HOA meeting, Darren tried to push a vote to seize my land outright. But just as the vote began, Deputy Vega stormed in with a court order. "Cease and desist," she announced. "Any further action will be considered conspiracy and property theft." Darren went pale. I blocked him as he tried to slip out. "You're done," I said. "This isn't over," he growled. But it was. At the court hearing days later, Judge Mulrooney read him the riot act. Illegal searches, weapon theft, fraudulent liens. Darren was arrested in front of a packed courtroom. When I walked out that day, cameras swarmed me. I just said, "I'm going home. Back to where I belong." The ranch looked different when I returned. Not because the land had changed, but because it was safe again. I made a promise to myself that night. This wouldn't happen to anyone else. So I ran for HOA president. And I won. The first board meeting, I passed motions banning unauthorized inspections, demanding full transparency, and repealing every unlawful fine from Darren's ring. A week later, my guns were returned. Even the musket. I built a case for it inside the house. A reminder of what was taken and what was reclaimed. One evening, Mrs. Claiborne brought over a pie. "Feels safer here," she said. "That's the point," I replied. And as the wind rustled through the porch rafters and the cattle lowed in the distance, I leaned back in Grandpa's old rocker, knowing the battle had been worth it. Because some land isn't just dirt. It's heritage. And some fights you don't walk away from. Not ever.